I will never sleep again. I will never sleep again.
Welcome to Never Sleep Again.
Your source for sci-fi and horror movie reviews.
I'm Jonathan,
And I'm Veronica.
and today we will be reviewing Scream 2022. This is the fifth entry in the franchise, so it's basically Scream 5.
Yeah. And if you haven't seen Scream 2022, now is your opportunity to exit the room, go check it out, and then come back and watch our review because there will be spoilers all throughout this video.
Yep, and in fact, this is your last and final warning to leave before you get hit with any spoilers.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen the movie already, why are you watching this video?
Exactly. Go watch the movie.
Nah, just kidding. We appreciate you being here. So let's get into it. So the movie starts off by introducing us to our first character, Tara. Tara's in the kitchen, and as usual, she's the girl in the kitchen receiving the phone call from Ghostface, although she does not realize she's talking to Ghostface until things just get a little too creepy. Ghostface successfully scares Tara into running for the front door, where she's attacked by Ghostface. He's slashing at her and stabbing her a few times, and before we can see Ghostface deliver the final blow, we're given our title card, letting us know that we are watching Scream 2022. So this brings us to our next scene when we're introduced to Tara's older sister Sam and her boyfriend Richie. They are outside of their job at the bowling alley, just talking, when Sam gets a phone call, and it's from Tara's friend Wes, letting her know that Tara was attacked last night and is in the hospital now. And not only was she attacked, but she was attacked by somebody wearing a ghost face mask, which is a pretty big deal because they are from Woodsboro, which is where the original Scream movie took place, and where the murders performed by Billy Loomis and Stu Macher. Billy Loomis and Stu Macher took place in those movies.
Yeah, in the original. So now Sam is convinced that Ghostface is out there and they're going to try to kill again. They're going to try to attack Tara, finish the job, maybe attack her. We don't know who their next victim will be, but she feels like they need to enlist the help of an expert. And we find out that expert is none other than Dewey. So they go to Dewey's house, she and Richie. They go to Dewey's house and, they talk to Dewey. Dewey then calls Sydney and explains to her that it started again. And, she's got to be...
Gail.
Yeah, he texts Gail. He lets them know, be careful. He tells Sydney, if you've got a gun, keep it on hand, basically, because Ghostface might try to come after her as well.
And so we are introduced to some of Tara's friends, which include Wes, of whom we heard earlier speaking with Tara's sister Sam, letting her know that Tara was in the hospital. Wes is also the son of Sheriff Hicks, who was previously Deputy Hicks from Scream 4. Next we have Chad and Mindy, who are the niece and nephew of Randy.
We've got Liv, who's a friend of Tara's as well, and Amber, who is also another friend of Tara's. So.
All very memorable characters.
We'll talk more about that later. So next we see that Ghostface has been keeping busy, and they now have switched their attention to Sheriff Hicks and Wes. And unfortunately, Sheriff Hicks and Wes do not make it out of their scuffles with Ghostface, and they end up dying. And so then we see Gail Weathers come onto the scene. All the paramedics are rushing over to Sheriff Hicks's house, the scene of the crime, and Gail shows up. And she's reintroduced to the audience, having been in all of the previous Scream movies. So.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. So Sam and Dewey, they realize that if all the police in Woodsboro are at the scene of the crime where Sheriff Hicks and her son have just been murdered, then there are no police that are guarding Tara's hospital room. So they rush back to the hospital, and Ghostface is terrorizing Tara in the hospital, trying to kill her. And during the confrontation, Dewey is murdered.
Yeah.
Shortly after Dewey is murdered, we are reintroduced to the legacy character, the final girl, the legendary final girl
Yeah.
of the Scream franchise, and that is Sidney.
Yeah, Sidney Prescott.
Sidney Prescott returns. So, unfortunately, during this time, Sam, Richie, and Tara decide that they are going to leave town, as they feel that that is the best way to protect Tara. Even though Sidney and Gail are trying to encourage them to stay, they still leave. However, on their way out of town, Tara realizes that she misplaced her inhaler, and she must have left her inhaler at a friend's house. The only problem is, at her friend's house, there's a huge party going on, and so they turn around and they go to this party. They go to the house. During this time, both Chad and Mindy are attacked during the party, and then we come to our final showdown.
Yeah. And so Tara, Richie, and Sam arrive, and meanwhile, Gail and Sydney have been tracking Tara, so they know where she went. And so a lot ensues, and basically we end up with Liv being shot in the head, and we find out who the Ghostface killers are. There are two of them, as there typically are, with the exception of that one Scream movie, number 3, where there was a solo killer. So the killers in this film are actually Amber and Richie. So apparently they were big fans of the Stab movies, which were basically
they were basically Scream.
Like Scream, yeah. It's like a spoof of Scream. And so, these movies get very meta. And so they're disgruntled fans, and they didn't like where the direction of the Stab movies have gone. They felt like they could make a better Stab movie. And so that's why they are, pursuing. They're killing, yeah. Yep, they're killing. So Amber shoots Liv in the head, and Gail gets shot in the midsection. Sydney gets stabbed in the midsection. Sam gets stabbed by Richie in the midsection.
Right. Yeah, a lot of either getting shot or stabbed in the midsection during this time.
And then it finally ends with Amber dying, Richie dying. Sam kills Richie, and Gail and Sydney actually, they kind of double team Amber.
Right.
We think Amber's dead, but she rises up for one last hurrah, and Tara actually shoots Amber in the head. So Amber dies, and then we reach the end of the film, and
end of the movie. Yeah.
That's that.
Well, we find out that Chad survived, and so did Mindy. Chad and Mindy both survived. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Everyone didn't die, so that's good.
Yeah.
So after watching Scream 5, Scream 2020, what would you say worked for you with this movie?
Okay, well, there were some things that worked for me. So I liked how there was a song that they played in the beginning, and before doing this review, I couldn't really find the name of it. But it sounds like they're sampling I'm Sorry, Miss Jackson, but there's a different artist singing over it. So it's not Outkast singing, it's somebody else singing.
Okay.
And I thought that was an interesting way to show that they were taking an old concept and putting a new spin on it, just like this movie is doing with the Scream franchise. So I thought that was kind of cool. It's the song that's playing when we're being introduced to Sam and Richie. That worked for me. The inclusion of, the fact that not so much the inclusion of the legacy characters, but the way the legacy characters Basically that the legacy characters were in the movie.
Yeah.
That worked for me. James and Chelsea from Dead Meat have a cameo in the movie.
Yeah, that was really
and
cool.
that definitely worked for me. They're good people.
Yes.
So
I was happy to see them. Yeah.
yeah. The Ghostface voice I thought was really cool. I thought that was cool. The voice on the phone, its voice changer. I like that. Stu Macher's house was in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty cool. That's a legendary scene. And Dewey's theme music. Those were things that worked for me. What worked for you?
Oh, that was really nostalgic. Hearing Dewey's theme music, yes.
Definitely.
Actually, a couple of things that you mentioned really worked for me. What you just mentioned, Stu Macher's house. I love that they included that in this film, and just bringing us back to the original. That was pretty cool.
Definitely.
When they basically alerted the audience at the same time as the characters that they were in the original house, like panned out of the house, and you could see the outline of the house, the white picket fence. So that was pretty cool.
Very.
Yeah, I did like the appearance of the legacy characters. I liked how they were utilized as well to an extent.
Yeah.
To an extent, and I think I'll just leave it there. But I did enjoy seeing them in this film, and because they're the reason why we have the Scream franchise that we know and love for the most part. It's because of them from the originals. So I thought it was great, their inclusion in the movie. And there was one scene in particular that I thoroughly enjoyed, and that was when Sydney and Gail actually teamed up against Amber. I thought that was a lot of fun. They
Pulp
really
Fiction
got to
style.
Yeah, right.
That was definitely Pulp Fiction style.
Yep. So they got to get a little bit of revenge there on Amber. So yeah, a few things I really enjoyed. What would you say didn't work for you with this movie?
Well, I'll start with my biggest, in no particular order. These are just some things that did not work for me. Dewey figures out who the killer is within the first few minutes that he's on screen.
Yeah.
He immediately suspects Richie.
He really did.
And the fact that it turned out to be him, I mean, it's cool that Dewey still got it, but it's just too easy. Mm-hmm. Dewey being killed by Amber, and it's an honor. That wasn't working for me. I felt for any of the legacy characters, with the exception of somebody like Sheriff Hicks, who I think we were only introduced to her in Scream 4. With the exception of her, with a legendary character, if they're going to be killed, they should get like a cool, I guess you could say a cool kill. Like, you got to think about like the Halloween movies where Mike Myers, some people, they're a trophy kill and he puts them up on the wall. A legacy character should have a more significant death.
Yeah.
Dewey and Sydney didn't get to reunite in person. They just had a phone conversation, and then Dewey dies before Sydney arrives. I thought that was corny. Okay.
Yeah.
So something that also didn't work for me is people, they seem to have just kind of they just didn't really seem to care about people in the movie. Just people are dying around them. Mm-hmm. They're making jokes and things. And this seems to be something that comes up in all of the Scream movies a lot. I don't feel like the people react the way people act in real life if there's a string of murders.
Yeah, the disregard for life. They
Yeah.
really take it lightly.
Right.
I mean, they are young. Like, a lot of these characters are young and they make jokes, but still.
I just don't, I just couldn't see anybody I knew as a teenager behaving that way, so that wasn't working for me. Mindy is watching Stab, and there's this scene where it's clearly supposed to be her Uncle Randy on the couch, and she's just laughing and cracking up, and it's like, that's supposed to be that's a representation of your uncle who later is killed by one of the Ghostface killers. And I couldn't imagine somebody's niece reacting that way,
No.
just sitting there like, oh, come on, man. He's
Enjoying
behind
the
you."
movie.
Enjoying the movie. It was just weird. When you put it in the context of real life serial killers and people who have been affected by them, you just, nobody would really do that. So that kind of took me out of the movie and wasn't working for me. The Billy Loomis Force Ghost Dark Passenger, that was stupid. That really wasn't working for me. I thought it added nothing to the movie. It's weird because he was a serial killer, and it's like he's helping her. He's helping her use the Force. Like, he's helping her find the knife, and and he's smiling. I could have done without that, without him just smiling like, "You did good, kid." It's just because he was a bad guy.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't, I understand that Sydney hallucinated seeing her mother in one of the movies and all, but still, that's a big difference from Billy Loomis being somebody's Obi-Wan Kenobi. It just doesn't it just doesn't work. And it was corny. The movie was really inconsistent with who could die from a stab, or how people how people all reacted to being stabbed or shot. It was a little bit inconsistent. So, for example, at the end of the movie, we have Amber, who she gets shot up by Gail and Sydney, and she gets lit on fire. So she's shot and lit on fire, and somehow she still has enough energy to get up off the floor and come yelling and screaming, holding a knife, like she's Chucky or something. And that's when Tara gets the final kill, and that's the only purpose it serves, so we can get a unintentionally hilarious and oddly satisfying kill.
Yeah.
But it makes no real sense. So yeah, so those are my complaints. So what didn't work for you?
Okay, again, there were some things that you mentioned that didn't work for me as well. A couple of other things, though, were the friends. I really felt like I didn't care about them. Honestly, I didn't really care about I didn't. No, I didn't care about most of the characters in this film. I felt like the movie did not do a good job of drawing emotional connection between the audience and the characters in the film. They introduced new characters, and I understand that sometimes it can be difficult doing that, especially in a beloved franchise where you have legacy characters that the audience already connects with. But unfortunately, I did not connect with any of these new characters, and a lot of the friends were forgettable. I just felt very lackluster. They weren't interesting, and it was kind of disappointing. The characters that they have developed here for this movie,
especially since we've seen them bring in a younger crowd before.
Yeah.
And Scream 4.
Scream 4. I gotta say, I feel like the reception wasn't that great at the box office for Scream 4, but I actually had fun with that movie.
Definitely.
I felt like the characters were memorable, they were interesting, and you cared about them to a certain extent. It was, I enjoyed Scream 4. I actually did. And, unfortunately, this version of Scream, the characters did not do it for me. I mentioned that I did like the appearance of legacy characters in this film, and the way they were utilized. They were actually integral to the plot. However, I gotta say, some of my favorite Scream movies are the ones where Sydney is really the center of the film. And I would have liked to have seen Sydney in more of the film. She really wasn't in it. She was in like the third act. Like we got to see a scene with her and Dewey on the phone, and it's like, oh, nice, Sydney is here. And then we didn't see her again until like the third act. So would have loved to have seen her more so throughout the film. And also, I didn't like, you mentioned the death of Dewey. I did not like the fact that Dewey was killed in this film. and the way that he was killed. So Dewey has been in all of the Scream movies. He knows the rules.
He's an expert.
He's an expert. And so I know, in this film, he's been retired for like a couple of years. And so he might be a little rusty. They haven't had to deal with the Ghostface killer for about 10 years. But at the same time, he's lived through it. Like, he's gone through it and survived multiple times. You have to double, triple, quadruple tap Ghostface when you get them down.
Right then and there.
Yes, they're in the hallway and he successfully shoots Ghostface. Ghostface falls down, and then he ushers Richie and was it Sam he was with, right?
Yeah,
Richie and Sam and Tara. Richie, Sam, and Tara into the elevator, and then he remembers, you gotta make sure they're dead. And then he turns around and goes back, and by the time he gets back to Ghostface's body, he gets distracted by a phone call, of all things. Ghostface lunges at him and immediately stabs him. And I just thought that was pretty unrealistic.
Right.
Considering everything he's gone through. Also, the fact that he would shoot Ghostface in the chest and leave without shooting Ghostface in the head, because as we know, bulletproof vests have been used in the series. So Ghostface could have been wearing one. It's just, unfortunately, Dewey did not complete the task the way we know Dewey can. And so that really stuck with me. I was disappointed. Also, the inconsistency with the deaths. Dewey was stabbed, once in the front and once in the back. Dies. And then he just immediately dies. Yeah. Now, I know he has some sustained injuries from before. He mentioned permanent nerve damage and whatnot, right. But I'm so sorry. He's not just going to be lights out immediately upon one stab in the front, one stab in the back. He's going to lay there for a period of time.
Well, not in a world where people are getting shot and lit on fire and still live.
Yes, exactly. So that did not work for me. No.
Really...
The Billy sequences did not work for me as well. What did you call them? The Force Ghost, Dark Passenger. Oh, yeah. Like the Dexter Dark Passenger.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't work because Billy was bad. So in the movie, Sam has been had some internal struggles because after she found out that Billy Loomis was her father, that's when she kind of went off the deep end and she kind of started getting into trouble as a youth. And she felt like maybe this was something she was going to turn into, or she just really struggled a lot with the fact that her father was a serial killer and she didn't want to turn out like him. So, the fact that he would now appear and just be like this guiding light for her, she was in the middle of a struggle and he kind of, showed her where the knife was with his eyes, and she grabbed the knife and he smiled. Right. It's like, I'm sorry, not Billy Loomis. It was great to see Skeet Ulrich in the movie though.
Yes, this is no hate or no shade towards Skeet Ulrich. Skeet Ulrich is cool.
Yes.
And he's a great person, a great father in real life.
Definitely.
So, but just this Dark Passenger Force Ghost, it just wasn't working.
It didn't work for me. So, and then one more thing I'm going to mention, the very last scene of the movie. So we talked about the inconsistencies with the deaths, and we mentioned that Gail was shot in the torso, Sydney was stabbed in the torso, Sam was stabbed in the torso, and the knife was twisted into her. And at the end of the scene, they're just chilling. They're just chilling by the ambulances. Tara is on a stretcher in an ambulance. And Sam is just kind of next to the door of the ambulance, and she's talking to Gail and Sydney. And or rather maybe Sydney and Gail are next to the door of the ambulance, right?
Yeah.
However, they're positioned.
They're sitting in the ambulance, I believe.
Yeah. However, they're positioned. They're just kind of chilling. And it's like, is anybody going to get them stretchers?
You're right. She was just standing up just fine.
Yes. And I'm like, okay, I do believe that if you get shot in the torso, you're going to need to go into surgery like almost immediately. Same thing with the stab wounds. You know, they're not just going to give you a Band-Aid and a blanket.
Right.
So very unrealistic again. I did not care for that scene. I would have liked to have seen maybe all three of them ushered into the hospital or at least into an ambulance.
Maybe because it's Woodsboro, this sort of thing happens all the time.
This sort of thing happens well, at least once every 10 years, right?
Right.
So,
at least that.
I thought that was quite funny, and you know, a little disappointing that would be the direction that they took after receiving such serious wounds. But
Right.
you know, that's our take on it. Very interesting film. And, you know, I'm glad I saw it for sure. It's a, again, beloved franchise. I enjoyed the original Scream movie, and I enjoyed rewatching the original Scream movie and, you know, the subsequent sequels. So after watching Scream 2022, what would you rate it based off of our rating system?
You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and give it a low. I'm gonna give it a low stream it.
Okay.
Originally, I was going to say bargain bin, but after thinking about it and after giving it a rewatch, I'll give it a low stream it.
Okay.
How about you?
Awesome. You know, it's funny, like our ratings have kind of been like the same as of late. So I would actually give it a low stream it too. I was considering maybe a high bargain bin or a low stream it, and I think it is worthy of the stream it category. Would I have seen it on opening day? No. Would I have gone to the movie theaters to watch it? Do I think it's worth the money to spend at a movie theater? Not really. So, you know, would I have preferred to see it that way? Not really. But definitely I feel like it's worthy of just waiting until it's available on a streaming service, kicking back at home, relaxing, and watching it that way. So, yeah, stream it.
Well, that's all our time for today. You have been watching Never Sleep Again. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Veronica.
And remember, stay
awake.